might notice that the first step that I did here, which you did not see, was I simply taped this seam together with a 5-minute epoxy and then let it cure. So this seam here is already glued. And then I installed all of my lights. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the epoxy in the pockets, the spar pockets. And then I'm going to run a little bead right where the spar is going to be sitting. I'm making sure that the filmed side of my spar is to the trailing edge, so the raw foam is actually forward. And I'm just filling in anywhere where I need a little more epoxy. Again, this is 30 minutes, so I do have some working time. So I've also drawn a line on this the panels here where the brace is going to go. And what I did was I came from this point here back about 1 1/8 inches, and then I ran the line parallel with the spar, and then I centered it in the groove in the radius here. So this is actually centered in the radius and sitting on that line. Same thing on this side. It's centered on the line, and I'm putting the tallest side of the brace toward the center. So now that's where the brace is going to go. The future kits will be marked, but if yours is not marked, you can pre-mark it. But that's where we're doing. We're coming back about 1 1/8 inches, and that's the center of it. Just one bead. And I'm going to pull it back. This will ensure that I get epoxy all the way back to the trailing edge. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And then I'm going to peel this or pull this back. Just pulling the epoxy back to the trailing edge. This way I don't wind up with a bunch of epoxy back on the trailing edge whenever the seam comes together. I've already cleaned my tip and put it back together, and I have been shaking my pan. So now we're going to spray this. I'm just going to put a bead of foam here, just like that. Now, I'm actually moving some foam around because I know about how much this is going to expand. Now, we're going to start closing it up, and this is how I'm going to do it. Now I can take this off. Make sure my wires are where they need to be. This one back. tape across the top here so I can pull the top over. Pull the top on up over. I'm really wanting to pull this tight here. Now we can kind of get a reference on how we are as far as the trailing edge. And looks like it's going to be fine. At this point, the top is actually up, or the bottom is up, and the top is down. So now what I want to do is go ahead and weight this. So I'm going to put a little weight here. I want to put a little weight here. And then I need a little bit of weight across the front here. I just want to add enough weight so that the piece or brace, I want to make sure that the foam sits right down on top of it so the epoxy can cure. Okay, I've let the wing set up, and what I did before I actually left it, I measured what it was at the leading edge, at the near the rear and at the front. So at the tip and at the root. And of course it's going to be the same up here, but I wanted to make sure that I was reading the same off my board. Of course I have a flat surface here and a flat surface here, and you can see I had to add a little bit of weight to tweak this a little bit to bring this down, because that was actually a little high. But at any rate, I've let it set. Now the epoxy is cured, because I've actually let it set about 2.5 hours. So now I'm just going to take everything off. And let's see how we wind up. I would say we'll wind up pretty good. Remember, the top is not glued, but looking at it there and just setting it down on the table, I'd say it took the shape pretty good. So whatever I'm off here, looks like I'm off over here. So we'll slide that back a little bit, and that's actually pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead and peel the tape. You want to be careful peeling the tape, because you don't want to peel the film off of the foam, and it's easily done if you're using some tape that's pretty sticky. But pulling this back, and this is where you have to really be careful, because you're pulling at the trailing edge. Better if you just come up and pull back toward the trailing edge. That way you're not lifting the tape. So here I'm making my little pastry bag again. So I got a fine tip, and I'm just going to wick the epoxy right in the gap here. And the idea is if I lay a bead on here, it's going to start rolling through, and then I'll be able to glue this together. Just like that. See, that's the one good thing about these pastry bag deals is, and you can put that epoxy right where you need it. just like that. Now I'll look for anything that's low, and I'll add a little more epoxy. Come all the way to the top, because actually what I'm going to do is, after I'm pretty sure that I've got the epoxy in there, and then I'm going to put a piece of tape over it and let the epoxy cure. Now, one thing about this tape, having the tape on top of the wing, is you're going to find that the epoxy doesn't stick to it really well. Again, I'm just going to pull it together, just like that. I have gone ahead and put in the Velcro for the battery, which is going to be on the bottom, and also my foam has turned out really nice. The amount of foam I put in there was perfect, because it expanded and filled the void cavity, but it did not overexpand. So this wing has turned out really good so far. So I've also cut the holes out, and one thing that I did do that I have not done in the past, or shown on the videos, is I've actually created a finger hole here. So when you put the battery in, and we'll just do that now. If you put the battery in, then in order to get the battery, you got to pull the wires. Well, with my little finger deal here, I can actually get my finger underneath the battery and pull it out. So, and all I did was took the Dremel tool and cut the finger hole there. All right, and this time, whenever I glued the pieces together, I am going to glue this up without making the pastry bag. There's some times where you don't need the pastry bag, and this is one of them. But what I'm doing right now is just coating the wood parts for the firewall, and this is 5-minute epoxy, so I am going to be working rather quickly to get it done. And we'll put it together just like that. Do the same thing on this one. So now I'm going to wipe this off somewhat and set this aside so that I can coat the area in which that block of wood is going to set, or the firewall is going to set. You can see it makes a quick task of it using the prop, because like I say, it makes a really nice spatula. And I'm putting a thin coat on here, and I'm actually making it a little large, because that's also going to reinforce the wing here. Okay, at this point I'm just going to clean off my stick and insert my part. I'm going to wedge this apart a little bit and then put it together. Just like that. Now I just want to push it down and make sure that I'm making contact, the top and the bottom. And there we go. So there, I'll give you a closer look. That's what we're after. So now I'll let this cure out, and then we'll install this piece here and the piece of foam that goes up in the front here. Just cut a bevel out of each end of it so that it fits up in the front, and it's going to actually run right up against the spar. In other words, the spar is this way, so this allows a good fit there. So I'm going to go ahead and just put the glue, the epoxy right where the seam is going to be, and then run a bead along the bottom. Then I'm going to set this down in it, and actually I'm going to put a little bead on the angle here just to make sure, and a little bead on the bottom. And now I'll set this in place and run a bead right on the top. Now I'm going to move this in place and just secure it, make sure it's up against the bar wall or the spar on both sides. Make sure I have it where I want it. And then I'm going to spread it out. And I'm actually going to use a number 8 screw to put this in place. So screw this right to the existing piece and tighten it up a little bit. The film, because this film, you won't be able to glue to it. Well, you can glue to it, but the glue won't, it'll stick to the film, but the film doesn't stick to the foam very well. And so, let me rob this. This is how we overcome that. This is one way to remove the film. You can put a piece of tape on it and peel it back, and you can see that it will come off. So let me do this again. So here it's coming loose. There, see, it'll come off. And if you get lucky, you can actually get it to come off in sheets like that. There, so you can see it doesn't take much to get it off. Okay, I'm getting ready to glue on the winglets with the lights mounted, and all I've done is just peeled the stick tape off the back of the lights and stuck them down. Now this is the left side. This here would be the right side. This is green and this is red for my color scheme. I'm putting the lights the way they would normally be on aircraft. So I've also gone ahead and soldered in the wires to the wires that are hanging out on the wingtip. And I've already preset my wires so that all I have to do now is add some glue, and then I can glue this in place. And then I'm going to stick this together and hold it until it sets up. And I did shrink wrap my wires so that there's no worry of them coming in contact with one another. And I do want to make sure that I get glue all the way around this tip. So now I'm going to put this in place, make sure my wires go inside. And then I'm going to hold this. The main thing is you get the bottom smooth, and the top side will be wherever it's at. But now I'm just going to hold this and let the epoxy cure. Now I'm just lining up the bottom with the winglet. This way when I land, I don't worry about catching the winglet on anything. And now I'm just going to hold this and let it cure. I want to check the lights to make sure that they are all working properly. They're all hooked up. I don't have any issues with the lights, so all of my green lights are on. The green light on the tip is on. The red light on the tip is on. And the red light's on the bottom. are all on. So my lights are working properly. Notice that I did leave my pigtail a little long, and I'm actually going to tie this into the speed controller. We want to make sure that the lights do not start to peel off, and right now I just have this double back, the stick tape that was on it. So what I'm going to do is mix up some epoxy and just put a couple of dots or dabs of epoxy down the top and the bottom of the light trail. That way it'll help secure the lights in place. Remove the tape from underneath the servo. That way whenever you glue the servo in, you're gluing it to the foam and not to the tape, because over a period of time that servo will work loose. I've had it happen, and the servos are a tight fit, so it's not that big a deal. You have to trim all the time, and if you look close, that's probably what's happened, is your servos have worked loose. So at any rate, just go up about 1/4 inch and just take out the tape, and then whenever you glue in the servos, you'll epoxy the servos right to the foam.